Hey guys, Jill Winger here. A couple weeks ago I did a Q&A video all about our businesses and the blog and how we create money at home to support our homestead. And today I'm going to be answering all your questions about everything non-business related. Everything from if we're having another baby, to what I plant in the garden, to who I was before I started the Prairie Homestead. It's gonna get juicy. Here we go. So these were all questions submitted by my Instagram followers a couple weeks ago. If you missed the business Q&A, I'll drop the link to that video in the show notes below. But these are all questions related to the other side of my life that doesn't have to do with the blog or our businesses. All right, first question, what do you think about supplements considering our ancestors didn't have them? I'm really not opposed to supplements. As much as I love to do things homemade and homegrown, I think we have to keep in mind that a lot of times the soil that we're growing things in, or the soil that vegetables or fruits are grown in elsewhere, are depleted of nutrients. But personally, I take the doTERRA Lifelong Vitality supplements. They're based off of whole foods. They're very high quality, and they just help cover the bases that might be missing in our diet, because even though we eat pretty good, we don't eat perfect. What do you plant every year in the garden? I'm gonna try to list this off with the mental picture I have of my garden in my head. So potatoes, onions, and garlic, always. Carrots, beets, sometimes radishes, always pumpkins, and usually some other types of squash, whether that's acorn spaghetti or maybe a summer squash. We do pickling cucumbers, which I always let get way too big before we pull them into the house. Lots of green beans, sugar snap peas, just for the kids mostly. Every so often we do corn, but not every single time. Peppers, and lots of tomatoes. All right, next one. Lifestyle changes can be overwhelming. How do you break down goals into steps? I love this question. I actually did a video a couple months ago about how we break down our homestead goals. For me, when I'm looking at a big project or a big change, it's all about brain dumping what's in here onto paper or onto a whiteboard, and then organizing it into things that need to happen right away, or 2 months from now, or a year from now, and then prioritizing, because you can never do all the steps at once. You cannot learn all the skills at once, whether you're homesteading or you're doing something else. So baby steps is where it's at. But the first step to understanding the baby steps is mapping it out so you know the path you're going to take. What is the best place to start with a homestead? Always the food. So if you can master food, whether that's growing or preparing it, you're gonna be so far ahead in your homestead journey. Do you raise chickens to process, and do you have any tips? We absolutely raise chickens, usually about a batch of 30 to 40 per year. I have a whole post on this I'm gonna leave in the show notes below. I say my best tip is to not let them go too long before you butcher them. Really pay attention to what the recommended window is for butchering with whatever breed you get. Is it difficult to take vacations because of the garden and animals? Yes. We have a lot of different strategies. We try to only leave during certain times of the year when the cows or the garden isn't as high maintenance. We have our garden drip on a timer, so it kind of automates itself. We have automatic waters. That being said, we don't leave all the time, and oftentimes Christian or I will split up, and one of us will stay home and one of us will do the traveling if it's for business or whatever. So it can be done. I don't want anyone to think that if you get a homestead, you can never leave again. It just takes some considerations and a little extra strategy to make it happen. Do you homeschool, and what method do you use? So yes, this is our 4th year homeschooling. I have one kid in 3rd grade and one in 1st grade, and we've been doing this since the beginning. I actually was homeschooled myself, so it's just been a logical process for us. I use a hodgepodge of curriculum. This year we started the Classical Conversations co-op in our local community, which has been a really great addition. That covers a lot of the basis as far as art, science, and history, plus the kids get to see friends every week. And then at home, we work on math and language arts. And so for math, I find that I usually use Singapore math or Saxon math. And for language arts, I found that spell to write and read is something that's working okay for us. It's a bear to get started. Like, it's really hard to learn the process, but once you have it, I really like the results it's giving me for the kids. So that's what we're using for now. Do you plan to have more kids? I think we're done. 3 feels good. We're getting out of the diaper bag phase of life, so it's kind of nice. And I really struggle with pregnancy. I get really sick and pretty much completely flat for the first trimester, and just not really keen on doing that again. So I think we're probably good. Why did you pick Wyoming? Well, Christian, my husband, was born and raised here, right? Pretty close in the area where we live now. I moved to Wyoming when I was 18 to go to a community college, and we met while I was in college there, and then we just decided to stay here. The land was affordable. We kind of found a property we like, which is where we still live now. Wyoming has really been in my blood since the day I got here, so I've just never wanted to leave. Can I substitute einkorn flour for all-purpose flour 1-to-1 in the cookbook? No. So einkorn flour is very different than regular wheat flours. The gluten's different, it absorbs water differently, and if you try to go 1-to-1 substitutions, usually you're gonna have kind of a mess. So I recommend, as you're learning to use einkorn specific recipes, or really work to understand the differences in swapping those two flours out. For those of you who are in my Heritage Cooking Crash course, we have a whole module on einkorn, and I talk about how to make swaps or the differences of the liquids and the kneading and all of that good stuff in there. How did you make your raised beds? This is another topic I have a whole post about, so I'll leave a link to that in the show notes below. We basically, in a nutshell, use something called bridge decking steel, which you will not find at Lowe's or Home Depot. You will have to find it at a special building supply store. So it's going to be a little harder for most people to source, but it's much more sturdy than a galvanized panel, and it made the construction of the beds pretty simple. So if you want all the details, I'll leave that link below. Who were you in your previous life before the homestead? I was raised in North Idaho, and I've always been really into horses, and so when I turned 18, I moved 1,200 miles away from home with my little truck, and I came to Wyoming to get a degree at a community college in equine studies. And so for a while I kind of worked in the horse industry. I thought that's where I would end up. Long story short, I met Christian and decided that maybe wasn't the path I wanted to go on. So after we got married, I was a vet tech for 2 years, absolutely loved it. When our daughter was born, our firstborn Mesa, I decided to stay home with her. So being home with that extra time to create and think is really what brought on this idea and inspiration for us to start homesteading and ultimately start vlogging. Where did you find the animals you raise on the homestead? So we've really got them a lot of different places, everywhere from Craigslist, which is where we got our matriarch milk cow Oakley, to different farm Facebook groups. And I've gotten chickens and different farm equipment there, goats and things like that. It's also where I sometimes sell milk cows or sell extra farmy type things. So it's really varied quite a bit. Every once in a while a neighbor will have an animal they want to sell, or we'll hear through the grapevine, but I guess there's really not one single place where we get our animals. How long do you wait after a calf is born to start once a day milking on the mama? So I think this varies. I usually wait about 2 weeks from the time the calf is born to when I start separating them at night. I have a whole post on the blog about once a day milking. I'll leave the link below. And I think you could probably start milking once a day a little bit sooner, but I just figure 2 weeks is a really nice window of time for them to get to know each other. The calf gets strong and more confident, and that's just kind of what I've always done, whether it was with our milk cows or our dairy goats. How do you not get burned out over homesteading? Well, sometimes I do get burned out, and when I do, I just take a break from whatever is causing the highest level of burnout. So I'll be honest, the last year has been really intense as we've launched the cookbook and had a lot of business projects. I haven't really been milking the cow that much. It just felt like too much for me to have to get up that extra amount in the morning and get outside to milk. So I've just left the calf on her. Once we get her bred again, the next cycle, I think I'll be ready and a little more in the game to milk her daily, but it just was too much. So I just took a break. And there have been years where, you know, we don't have a batch of meat chickens or we slow down the garden. I think it's a balance of pushing yourself when appropriate and getting out of your comfort zone, but not holding yourself so hard and fast to this idealized version of what a homesteader should look like that you ultimately end up resenting it. Does your family eat organic only? Nope, we sure don't. I buy organic whenever possible. I buy local whenever possible. There are times when I just don't buy organic because I just don't feel like the cost is justified. There are certain items of produce, you know, I try to keep the ones on the Dirty Dozen list, definitely organic. But the other ones, I don't always buy organic bananas. I don't always buy organic avocados. We basically do the best we can, follow the 80-20 rule, and call it good. Do I have to discard half of my sourdough starter before I feed it, or may I grow more? You definitely don't have to discard your starter every single time you feed it. And absolutely, if you want to bulk up the starter for a big baking day, then just don't discard during those few days of feedings. Of course, if you never, ever, ever discard, eventually your sourdough starter will be bigger than your kitchen, which is a problem. But otherwise, you know, bulk it up to where you need it to, use it down, and then kind of just play it by ear. How did you know you wanted to homestead, and what are the best and hardest part? I knew we wanted to homestead pretty much the day we closed on this property. It was our first property. Chris and I had wanted to own land our whole lives, and so it was the fulfillment of a lot of dreams, but I also was simultaneously hit with this revelation that I want this property to be productive, and how can I make it grow things, and how can I create with it? And so that was the spark that sent me to the library to get books on goats and compost piles and chickens, and literally almost overnight, I went from not even caring about what I was eating to figuring out how to make tortillas and yogurt and, you know, bread and things like that. So the property was the catalyst, and then it went so much farther from there. The best part about homesteading for me is just the quality of life. I mean, there are many days where I literally pinch myself. It just feels like such a dream come true to have the animals and to be out here on our own property where it's peaceful and calm and we're growing food and we're producing and we're creating, and that's just like those blissful days. The hard days, or the hard parts, are when things die, of course. We've had some chicks die the last couple weeks. I hate it every single time. It never gets easier. And then along with that, sometimes it's really hard to balance the stress of a modern life with this old-fashioned homestead lifestyle. And there are times when I'm trying to be, you know, the homeschool mom and drive the kids to parties in town and do all the things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it'd be so much easier if I didn't have the garden to deal with in the middle of it all, or we didn't have barn chores to do. So it never makes me wish it away, not once ever, but it definitely complicates things, which I feel like anyone who gets into this homestead life needs to be prepared for and have plans in place to handle the extra tasks and sometimes stress that comes along with homesteading. And that's all the questions I have, guys. I'll do another one of these in the next couple months. If you have other questions you'd like to see me answer on camera, drop them below. But thanks for watching, and I will be back next week with another homestead video for you.